you very much for joining us on this very special edition of the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya Shrinate. It is a royal snub for the government in the power struggle within the CBI, and an order which will have huge ramifications in the running of the country's top investigative agency. The Supreme Court today reinstated Alok Verma as the CBI director, setting aside the government's decision to remove him in a midnight coup and send him on leave. Delivering the verdict, the top court said the CBI chief can be removed only with the sanction of a statutory panel that comprises of the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, of the Lok Sabha, and of course the Chief Justice of India. But it is only a symbolic victory for Verma, who retires by the month end, as he has been barred from taking any major policy decision. And a political slugfest has already begun, with Rahul Gandhi stating that nothing can now save the Prime Minister from the Rafal scam. Clearly in a damage control mode, Finance Minister Jaitley clarified that the government is not biased against any individual and was acting only on the basis of the recommendations of the Central Vigilance Commission. That might well be the case, but coming months ahead of the general elections, the Supreme Court order snubbing the government has come as a shot in the arm for the opposition, giving them some more fodder, which has already launched a major campaign for destroying institutions of national importance. The reinstatement and how it could work as a deterrent against political high-handedness in top-level appointments, whether by this government or successive governments, is exactly what we're discussing on the India Development Debate this evening. Joining us is a stellar panel. Hitesh Jain represents the BJP, Mohammad Khan represents the Congress Party, AP Singh, former CBI Director, and Gopal Jain, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court. So thank you very, very much, each one of you, for being with us. And let me begin with the legal perspective. And Gopal, does this put to rest whether Section 8 of the CVC can have any superintendence over functioning of the CBI? Has the Supreme Court clarified enough on that front?
Yes, I think it was very important for the court to finally settle this issue, and by saying that, look, this kind of decision can only be taken by the high-powered committee, at least for future. We all know that the removal power will not lie with the government, but it will have to go through the high-level committee, which is a way of insulating the functioning of the CBI, the appointment and removal of its director from the clutches of the government, and giving it an independent framework by these three very esteemed people who will decide on these issues. So you maintain the impartiality and the independence, you also insulate it, and like you said, you bring clarity by finally declaring the law on this subject.
Fair point indeed, but let me take this across to Mr. AP Singh. And Mr. Singh, has the Supreme Court actually differentiated here between the institution, that's the CBI, and Alok Verma? For the institution, the Supreme Court has very emphatically said that inquiry can be ordered not by the CVC, but the committee has to take a call. And so Alok Verma has been reinstated, but he doesn't have powers till such time that there's a pending inquiry and the committee takes a call. So has the court actually given a verdict, but has differentiated between the institution and the individual?
I think it's what is important today was the position of the institution. So I think the Supreme Court has given a very landmark judgment by which they have strengthened the autonomy of the CBI by making the director completely autonomous, and that he could only be removed or any action taken only by the high-powered committee. So it's irrespective of individuals, it is the institution that has been insulated.
Fair point indeed, and I think that is heartening that at least from an institutional point of view, the executive interference must not happen, and that's a message strongly delivered by the Supreme Court. But Hitesh Jain, you represent the Treasury benches here, and will you disagree with me this evening when I say that this is a snub, and no less than a snub for the government, of how unceremoniously Alok Verma was sent on a leave in a midnight coup of sorts? Will you at least concede, and you're a lawyer, you understand this a lot better than some of your other spokespersons do, in hindsight, was it wrong for the government to resort to the action that it did? Did it act too hastily?
Well, frankly speaking, I don't look at the verdict on such important issue as from the politics or all, whether it is a snub or not a snub for the government. Let us look at the facts. The government clearly acted on the recommendations of CVC to protect the institutional integrity and credibility. Now the issue is that under the Delhi Special Police Act, and Gopal is also there on the panel, and he will also concur with me, that there were two provisions which were overlapping with one another. One is about the power of superintendence of the CVC, and second is the high powered committee, and particularly keeping into mind the Vinit Narayan case and everything. So the Supreme Court, insofar as the jurisdictional issue is concerned, the Supreme Court has given a very clear finding that yes, there is a power of superintendence, but you have to come back to the high powered committee. But having said that, the Supreme Court has also restored the principle of accountability also. For example, it has not thrown out the issues, the background on the basis of which such orders came to be passed and what was going on in the CBI. The Supreme Court has kept the door of inquiry open, and the Supreme Court has particularly stated that they are not commenting on the report of the CVC which was kept in the seal cover, because if they are answering the issue of jurisdiction, then depending upon what their answer will be, they will deal with that aspect, and they have now left that domain to the committee. So what the Supreme Court has basically done today, it has struck a balance. In a way, it has restored the institutional, it has insulated the office of the CBI, and on the other hand, it has also maintained that accountability is also important, and if there are certain issues, the person will have to face. Now the forum is going to be the committee which is ultimately going to decide, and therefore when you look into at the end of the judgment, the Supreme Court clearly says that CBI chief, Mr. Verma, although he is restored, he cannot take any major policy decisions also.
Fair point. Yes. Yeah, Hitesh, I'll come to the policy decisions in just a bit, and who better than Mr. AP Singh to tell us what major policy decisions are and what is routine. But I'll take a quick word with Mohammad Khan, and you know, Mohammad, my only question is that the Congress party seems to be claiming some sort of a high-handed moral victory of sorts here. Let me just remind our viewers, the judgment is silent on the charges on Verma. Yes, it very emphatically tells the Modi government to back off, do not interfere in an executive sort of a way with the function of the CBI, but it is silent on the charges on Verma. And it must be noted that there are very serious charges against him, to say the least. What happens to all those investigations against him? It's not as if he's been, he's been let loose of them. The Supreme Court has decided to not talk about those.
So, Supriya, this entire day, the BJP has been trying to bog us down in semantics, and I think Hitesh Jain tried to further that attempt. But I will say this, if we distill that judgment into its simplest formulation, what is it? It is a rejection by a 3-judge bench of the Supreme Court of an executive decision that was heavily criticized. But let us get to the point. You know, it is tragic as well as hilarious how all day the BJP has been claiming this as a victory for the integrity of institutions, and even Hitesh tried to touch upon that point. But if we extend that logic, Supriya, then they are saying that the decision they took at 2 AM at night to remove the director was against the integrity of the institution, and this rejection by the Supreme Court, which they are welcoming as a resuscitation, is correct. So bड़ी confused position ले रहे हैं ये लोग. दूसरी बात, I'll say this. Look, Supriya, this is a government that has spent 4.5 years undermining institutions. It has the dubious distinction of having 4 economic advisors leave, 2 RBI governors resign before their term is over, 4 Supreme Court judges come out, hold a press conference against them, and 2 directors of the CBI, senior most, fight with one another, where the Prime Minister in an unprecedented fashion intervenes and sends both of them on leave, when there is no parity between the two. I would simply say this, today is a moral victory not for the Congress, but for the common man who saw these people undermine these institutions, and these convoluted defenses Ritesh Jain is putting out. I frankly would love to respond to him. I have no clue what he was saying or what his point was, but I'll simply say this. Aaj inka pardafash ho gaya hai. They are now proven in the eyes of history to be the most ineffective government ever. No government has suffered this embarrassment.
Okay, Mohammad, give me a minute. I want to take a quick question to Hitesh before I move across to AP Singh and Gopal Jain. And Hitesh, can the government today hide behind this being just a CVC order that was being implemented? Because it's not just the CVC order that has been quashed. What has also been quashed and set aside is the DOPT order. The DOPT reports directly to the Prime Minister. It's headed by him. And that was also struck down for violating due process. Will you at least agree that due process was violated? You can't hide behind a CVC order and other things like that.
I think the judgment of the Supreme Court is very clear, and the Supreme Court has nowhere stated that the due process has been violated. Supreme Court has answered the issue of jurisdiction. Regarding the DOPT order is concerned, it was a consequential order. Once the CBC recommendation came, on that backdrop, the DOPT order came. It is not the DOPT order came, then the CBC order came, and then the order of, whatever the orders of shifting the director is concerned, that was passed. So, that is one aspect. And as regards, my friend Mohammad Khan has mentioned, we did not get any observation as a caged parrot or trying to influence. I think the Supreme Court has confined its observation purely to the jurisdictional issue, and it is fine. It is the, that is the reason the courts are there, to settle the issues of law, to answer the questions of law. And when in doubt, who is the best institution? The Supreme Court itself. All this talk speech is fine. Fine. Mohammad Khan can make a speech, but at the end of the day, the charges against Mr. Verma have been left open, and the Supreme Court has not commented on them, and the Supreme Court has basically just simply answered that it is the high-powered committee which is going to take the decision. So we have to understand the judgment from the total perspective and in totality, and not just look at one aspect.
Okay.
Can I just say one thing? Can I say one sentence?
Okay, we will talk about, no, one second.
One sentence
very
to
quickly,
respond to him.
Mohammed. One sentence only.
One sentence. Hitesh, you spent 3 months in the Supreme Court spending taxpayer money on the top lawyers in the country to argue this position of law, and you have been defeated. And you stand here and claim vindication. Mujhe samajh nahi aa raha. Why did you waste the taxpayers' money then?
Take it. Okay. All right. I'm going to take this forward. I don't think I want to get into a political mudslinging of sorts here. Gopal, what about the CVC? Does the CVC has to own up to some responsibility here? Does the CVC need to clear the air because the order there has been quashed? Or is it just procedural? Is CVC in the dock this evening?
Well, let me not use a strong word like being in the dock, but quite clearly, as you said, their order has been quashed. And I think the most important thing is you have to look at the framework and the architecture of the judgment, which very clearly defines the role of what the CBC does in terms of superintendence, what the high-powered committee does. So I think importantly, it settles the position. So each institution knows what is the role it has to play, what is its remit, what are the powers it can exercise, and within what limits or jurisdiction. If you then take the principle and apply it, then what the court has done is it has set aside the DOPT order, it has set aside the CVC order. It has therefore said that the committee will now decide the fate of Mr. Verma. But since that had not happened in the past, they have given him a chance to say, okay, you go back, as in you are reinstated. But since you are not out of the woods and the fate is to be decided by this forum called the high-powered committee, you will not take any major policy decisions. So I think it's a balanced order which has looked at the totality of the situation as well as felt the need to clarify the legal position so that in a situation of this kind in future, there is no ambiguity. Vineet Narayan did it at that point in time to some extent. This the Supreme Court has now taken forward and settled this position. So I think we have to look at the ruling of a court in this context and not, as you said, who's been snubbed or, each person claiming victory of sorts. I think it's really important that institutional autonomy and integrity, which is at the center of the rule of law, that has been upheld by the court, and the system of checks and balances, that the executive doesn't interfere in the functioning of autonomous and independent institutions, that has been reiterated. So in that sense, I would say this is it's a landmark judgment, and it augurs well that autonomy and institutional credibility and independence has been maintained by the Supreme Court.
Okay, just give me a minute because I want to take two quick back-to-back questions with Mr. AP Singh, and who better placed than him to answer this. Mr. Singh, there has been a lot of conjecture, there's been a lot of confusion on what the court means by the caveat that has been put in on the reinstatement, which is to cease and desist from any major policy decisions or one of institutional implications. What does that mean? Because to my mind, an FIR or a preliminary inquiry, these things are routine functions of the CBI. Are these important? Are these major policy decisions? What is it that Mr. Alok Verma can do? Is it in some sense status quo? I'm just trying to understand what are major policy decisions, because some of what I just said is perhaps routine.
See, first of all, this caveat is very temporary. I mean, it is the Supreme Court is just saying that let it go to the High Part Committee and let them take a decision within a week. And after that, either Mr. Verma's powers are fully restored, or then the High Part Committee recommends certain actions against him. Now, as far as policy decisions are concerned, this is a grey area, but definitely investigation is not part of policy. So, Mr. Verma is free to get cases registered, get charge sheets filed, and the normal CBI work of searches, arrests, all this will carry on. So, it is not that, the CBI, just because Mr. Verma, they've said policy decision that no cases in CBI are going to be registered or no investigations are going to be done. So, all this work will carry on, and I don't think the policy decision means administrative. So, normal administrative work in the CBI will also continue. That means transfers, postings, and whatever their routine work is. Now, policy decisions, as far as I can say, is what would be a policy decision in the CBI? It would be, for example, a CBI decides that in bank scam cases we will not take up cases of more than 100 crores. That would be a policy decision. Or say that CBI decides tomorrow that cases that are more than 2 years old, and if they are referred from the states, CBI will not investigate them. So that would be a policy decision. But apart from that, I don't think that it's really affecting the day-to-day functioning of the CBI. And in any case, this decision has to be taken within a week as per the Supreme Court order. So I do not think that it is
but I have a quick follow-up question
of Mr. Verma as director in any major way. Yeah.
Okay, that's an important clarification that you're making, and that's a very important point, because the things that you said, case registered, preliminary inquiry, FIR, charge sheets, arrest, raids, all of these are routine functions of the CBI. That's an important clarification, and just for the benefit of our viewers, it's important to point out that the Supreme Court had given a similar order for interim director Nageshwar Rao as well. Exactly the same nature, that big policy decisions could not be taken. We still did see UP mining scam and Akhilesh Yadav being put in the dock and all of this. The reason why, sir, I asked that question, and AP Singh, I think I want you to answer this question for me. Will this have ramifications for an issue like Rafal? We were given to understand that the CBI chief was looking into papers before he was sent on leave. He's supposed to retire on the 31st of January, 3 weeks from now. Could he be looking at things that are unsettling as far as Rafal is concerned? Could he order a preliminary inquiry?
Now, I'm answering on the basis of whatever comes in the newspapers and what you see on TV. But the Rafal petition that was given to the CBI director was by Mr. Arun Shourie and Mr. Yashwant Sinha. And as far as I know, the same petition came to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has, for the moment, said that no action is required to be taken. So I can't see how the CBI director can take any action in the Rafal matter when it has already been decided by the Supreme Court, unless some fresh facts come to light and a review petition is filed in the Supreme Court. So I don't think that investigation is really a critical issue at the moment.
Okay, fair point indeed. I have a question to ask of the Congress party, and then I will go to the BJP. And Mohammed, you've got to be, you've got to be non-partisan, and you've got to be honest here. The Supreme Court has said that the selection panel will have to meet within a week, decide on the report, and then take the next course of action. The panel comprises of the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, and the Chief Justice of India. As citizens of this country, can we expect our politicians to set aside their political differences and take a non-partisan call on this? Or will a matter as big as this be decided in the atmosphere, in the environment of political mistrust that we are seeing?
Look, there are two issues before the high-powered committee. One, do we restore unto Mr. Verma the 3 months that we robbed him of by virtue of these protracted proceedings? I think we can all agree that the order having been set aside, Mr. Verma is entitled to a 3-month extension. That is the genuine position that the Congress will argue in favor of. Number two, They have been saying, as you also pointed out at the beginning, that there are very serious and grave charges against Mr. Alok Verma. But I remember the day in the Supreme Court when they were discussing that sealed envelope. The judge, the Honorable Chief Justice said to Mr. Verma, sir, there are charges against you which are very flattering and there are charges against you which are not so flattering. So it seems to be a mixed bag. And then he took a conscious decision, despite having asked for the CVC report, to confine themselves to the jurisdictional issue. So once Mr. Kharge sees the report, I'm sure he'll come to an informed finding. I will only conclude by saying this. Look, we are very happy to participate. And in the Lokpal, I think that's the parallel you were drawing when you said the politics. In the Lokpal, the only reason we didn't participate, Supriya, is because they invited us as a special invitee who had no voting rights. So that was a mockery of the Supreme Court's order which required them to hold that meeting in the first place. So in this, we have voting rights. We will participate. We hope to do you and the people of this country justice.
Okay, Hitesh Jain, we hope that justice will be done as far as the institution is concerned. We hope Mr. Kharge and Mr. Modi will be able to sit together and take an informed decision and not one under the political climate right now. But I think the question that I want to ask, and these are really closing remarks with all of you, and I just urge all of you to keep it brief, is one really thought that institutional autonomy in this country was under attack, and there were, there were experts who were voicing that opinion. There was evidence of the CBI, then of course the judges coming out, then the RBI resignation. Does this in some sense, I'm not just talking about your government, I'm really talking about the political class at large, because the Congress cannot wash its hands off where the CBI has ended up today. They are equally responsible, if not more, of where the institution is. But the reality is that does today's Supreme Court verdict in some sense deliver a very stern message? And will this mean that institutions will be allowed to operate on their own outside of the realm of political interference?
Well, frankly speaking, the judgment of the Supreme Court clarifies the jurisdictional issue. It gives a clarity to that extent. It's certainly welcome. But having said that, can we also forget the fact that when Mr. Verma was being appointed, Mr. Kharge was the first person to give a note of dissent, saying he is a biased and the prejudiced person and he is not a person who is fit to be deserved to be appointed. This was by Mr. Kharge, and suddenly in 2 years, he is, the Congress party says, oh, he deserves further 3 months. So this was not the position. The BJP did not play the politics. It looked at the proper candidate, it proposed the proper candidate to the committee, and it was Congress who submitted the note of dissent, because at that time also what they wanted to build up an argument that you are putting up a pliant person. Recently, the judgment in 1984 riots case has come out, and we saw how for 32 years the investigations were scuttled, including the Supreme Court, how the institutions were used and how the opinions were given and how the case were closed. And finally, it was the SIT that was constituted in 2015 that investigated, and we ensured that the conviction came in 3 years. So we know the track record, we know when the cage parrot come, and as far as this government is concerned, we can assure the people that we believe in institutional integrity and credibility.
Okay, I'll take a really quick question to Gopal Jain, because this is a tricky situation. The Congress had given a dissent note earlier. Now can the 3 months be given back to Mr. Alok Verma because he's lost that in transition? He was sent on this forced leave. And how tricky will the situation also be for the committee from the point of view that there is going to be a partisan divide between the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition, and the Chief Justice of India, who has delivered a verdict in this, will also have a say, and he'll have to take either, a side either way. Gopal.
So I think when the three of them sit together, it's a statutory, it's under a statute. So they'll be exercising in that sense statutory power, if I may use the word, which has statutory flavor. And when you don that cap, you are meant to act on the basis of the material which is placed before you and not carry any notion that you may have either about the institution or about a person. So that is why I think this judgment is very important, because it maintains the sanctity of the decision making process. It's not in their individual capacities, but collectively as a forum called the high powered committee, they sit under the act. So I think that's the best protection that we give. Like when you have regulators, they are created under an independent act. So it gives them independence and all the powers to act independently, autonomously, but most importantly on the basis of what material is available to arrive at a conclusion, and not on the basis of any perception or notion that you may have. So I think that's the safety valve I see, and the bedrock that we are in good hands if you have a committee of such eminent people, but more importantly brought together under one forum by virtue of the act, not executive, not administrative, but statutory.
All right. Sure. On that note, completely out of time here, but can't thank this wonderful panel enough, A, for keeping it sane and for having a mature discussion on matters that really relate to the independence and autonomy of the CBI, what the court really has delivered today, what's the message that all of us need to go back to with this decision. But thank you very much, Mr. AP Singh, Gopal Jain, Hitesh Jain, and of course Mohammed Khan, for bringing your views to the table. This is an important matter, it's a sensitive issue, and I'm glad we could have had a mature discussion on this.